men, open it up and recognize that other people can be qualified. And the fact that we want to, at a time when people are dying, decide that a country of immigrants is failing or people are dying because the same very people that built this country, because the last time I checked, y'all didn't say that anything was wrong with the White House, and I can promise you it was my ancestors that built the White House. So listen, if we have been good enough to build this country, we are good enough to serve and die overseas, we are good enough to serve in other ways. And the fact that people actually decide that they want to engage in public service, whether it's sitting in Congress or whether it's serving on the fire department or the police department, should not be an issue. The fact is, stop trying to act as if only white men are the ones that are capable. Because right now, you're sitting at a table with 3 very capable black women.
You know, there are moments when you can sense racism from a mile away. It's almost predictable. But this one genuinely caught me off guard. What looked like a normal political discussion at first quickly spiraled into one of the most unbelievable displays of hypocrisy I've seen in a long time. And just so you know, this particular Newsnight segment we're breaking down happened about a year ago, but the conversation feels just as relevant today as it did then. It's the kind of clip that reminds you how deeply rooted some of these attitudes still are. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next breakdown right here on Fact Override. All right, let's get into it. So, during this segment, things were getting heated when one of the panelists brought up Senator Ted Cruz, and suddenly, the MAGA pundit just lost it. You could see the frustration boiling over the moment Cruz's name came up. Remember when Cruz jetted off to Cancun while his state was freezing and people were literally dying without power? Yeah, that's the example she mentioned. And instead of owning that hypocrisy, this guy acted like mentioning it was some kind of personal attack. It's wild, isn't it? We used to have moments in this country, think back to 9/11, when national tragedy brought people together, when politics took a back seat to basic humanity, but not anymore. Now, every disaster turns into a political weapon. Every tragedy becomes another chance to score points online. And then, as if to prove the point, the MAGA side started doing exactly that. Trump himself jumped in, blaming Biden and California's governor for the deadly fires. In the middle of people losing their homes, their livelihoods, even their lives. Reports were already confirming deaths, and yet, here's the so-called leader turning grief into a political slogan. It's beyond tone-deaf. It's heartless. Because at some point, leadership stops being about talking points and starts being about compassion, something that's been completely missing from these MAGA-style responses to tragedy. What we saw in this clip wasn't just a debate. It was a clear window into the moral bankruptcy that fuels so much of today's political theater.
In the future.
Trump was talking about a water restoration declaration, and Gavin Newsom's office responded. He says there's no such document as the water restoration declaration. That's pure fiction. He goes on to say that he's focused on providing resources to Californians. Trump, I'm not really sure what Trump is talking about with that, but there are a lot of other issues, climate change, even the forestry issues are very real here.
Yeah,
Again,
I agree.
Why not focus on that?
There are a lot of issues here, and it has a lot to do with local governance. I mean, today I've heard Democrats try to deflect and say, oh, you're not allowed to politicize this right now, which means you're not allowed to criticize the decisions that we've made out here in California. I keep hearing climate change all day. Nobody seems to want to take responsibility for the local governance that has led to some of the failures and the devastation that we're seeing. The mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, had one of the most disastrous public appearances I've ever seen in the face of an emergency today, when she was incapable of answering questions about her decision-making. She had a terrible press conference. There's no local leadership. She was in Africa when this was going on and then had to scramble back. They did cut money from the fire department in Los Angeles.
They cut about $17 million, but I just want to know.
And people have questions about why that is. It's not,
but I just
it's not politicizing things to raise public policy questions when this devastation occurs.
Can I tell you that I agree with you, that I think Democrats have got to do a better job of pushing back, not just by saying, oh, let's look at what's really happening right now, but going directly after some of the inconsistencies that you're saying. You're talking about how local government has problems. State government is where you want to push all of these resources into, and them being the ones that are going to be solving these problems. But then you want us to say that federal government is supposed to have be the ones who are in charge of this. State government had to make decisions in California, whether it's reducing budgetary constraints in one area for others. And a mayor being overseas when a disaster happens, that can happen anywhere.
So I would
Remind
agree
you of
that
Ted Cruz. The storm came through Texas, and
my
Ted
gosh.
Cruz decided that he was going to flee.
I mean,
so, like, what we not going to do
honestly,
is talk
look,
about, like,
so,
what
look,
electives are
let me
doing.
just finish my thought real quick.
I mean, spending, you have to make hard decisions in spending.
Sure.
And so when Karen Bass reduced by $17 million the budget of the fire department, they instead put millions of dollars into their cannabis regulation program
Well, Congressman,
and $10 million
this is why
into their
I
city
wanted- and
attorney's
also
office.
into
Hang on a
homelessness,
second.
which
This
was
is why I
a
want to
huge
just
issue that you
provide
wanted
a
to
little
go
bit of
into.
context on the budget, okay? $17 million was cut from the budget, which, by the way, she was under a lot of pressure from conservatives to cut the budget. The fire department has an $800 million budget, so it's a huge budget. Also increased in that budget was the LAPD, the police department, increased by $126 million. So there's some budgetary give and take there, but I think you would agree it's a 2% cut to the fire department budget, and it's not even clear that that had anything to do with readiness. So just to set the
Okay, but I think we can all acknowledge that with a $43 billion budget, there's enough money to pay the firefighters and the cops.
I know, but
This is not a false
I guess
dichotomy.
all I was saying was that I don't know that it has anything to do with the readiness of the fire
Okay,
department.
but here's what I know. When she was cutting the fire department $17 million, she was putting millions more into cannabis regulation. At some point, these decisions about who our leaders are have impacts on real people's lives.
And they signal priorities, because also in California, you might have recall a news story from last year. There was some interest in the fire departments and the firefighters in California, and the interest was that there were too many white men who were firefighters, and we need to have a program in California to make sure we don't have enough white men as firefighters. So we have DEI, so we have DEI, we have budget cuts, and yet I'm wondering now, if your house is burning down, how much do you care what color the
Congresswoman,
firefighters
you
are?
can respond, and then we'll...
Listen, I am so tired. You know what? There was an article that just came out that said that actually the most educated demographic in this country right now is Black women. So let me be clear. Because you are a woman, or because I know that some of the right has been sharing these photos of the fact that I believe that the fire chief may be a woman or something, that has nothing to do with it. We are looking at qualifications. What diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been about is saying, you know what? Open this up. Don't just look at the white men. Open it up and recognize that other people can be qualified. And the fact that we want to, at a time when people are dying, decide that a country of immigrants is failing, or people are dying because the same very people that built this country, because the last time I checked, y'all didn't say that anything was wrong with the White House, and I can promise you it was my ancestors that built the White House. So listen, if we have been good enough to build this country, we are good enough to serve and die overseas, we are good enough to serve in other ways. And the fact that people actually decide that they want to engage in public service, whether it's sitting in Congress or whether it's serving on the fire department or the police department, should not be an issue. The fact is, stop trying to act as if only white men are the ones that are capable. Because right now, you're sitting at a table with 3 very capable Black women.
I'm not.
Now, here's where the conversation takes a turn that hits much deeper than politics. One of the panelists drops a truth bomb, pointing out that statistically, Black women are the most educated demographic group in America, yet somehow they're still among the most disrespected and underestimated. Think about that for a second. The same group that's breaking barriers in education, leadership, and community impact is often treated as if their success somehow doesn't count. And the way he put it, it's painful but honest. He said that Black women often have to work twice as hard, achieve twice as much, and prove themselves twice over, just to get what a mediocre white counterpart might receive without question. Not because of a lack of talent or discipline, but because of how society still measures worth, by skin color, by background, by stereotype. When you stop to think about that, it's not just unfair, it's barbaric, it's primitive, it's something that shouldn't exist in a so-called modern nation. The idea that anyone should have to overperform just to be seen as good enough reveals how deep this bias runs. Then he turned directly to MAGA supporters, not to insult, but to challenge. He said, if you claim you're not racist, but you keep defending the systems and people who clearly are, what does that make you? That line hit like a punch, because standing silently beside injustice is its own form of participation. He talked about how hatred isn't something people are born with. It's something that's taught. It's a learned behavior, passed down like a bad habit from one generation to the next. Parents, communities, social circles, they plant the seed. But here's the key. That cycle can be broken. You can unlearn it the same way you learn basic math, step by step, through awareness and accountability. And then he spoke directly to those who wear their religion as a badge. He said, if you call yourself a Christian, how are you going to answer to God when he asks why you stood by and allowed racism to thrive, or worse, why you carried hate in your own heart? That's not just a moral question, it's a spiritual one. It forces you to ask whether your faith is real or just convenient. This wasn't a lecture, it was a mirror held up to an audience that desperately needed to see the reflection.
Has been in DEI programming and budget cuts, and now we have this massive
Hold on,
fire.
are we
People
really,
upset.
but Scott, are we really blaming the fire department? The people in the LA fire
No,
department,
I'm blaming the
right?
Democrats who
no,
run
no,
the
no, no,
state.
but the fire department right now, they are dealing with a historic fire, okay?
And they have terrible
that is,
leadership.
That is
Political
caused
leadership.
by climate, by the fact
I don't
that
know
it
that-
is
I don't know that
extremely
that's true.
dry
Can you let
in the
her
state of
finish?
California, and they are fighting it in tropical force winds in that state. So how is it anything to do with DEI? How is it anything to
Well,
do
no one has said that
with
the
the
fire
fire department at
department-
all? They are doing
No
their
one
very
has said
best
that
as
the
far as
fire
I know.
department is
Yeah,
not
is it the
doing a
water
good job.
or not?
What is it? The water that's the problem? It's the fire department is the problem. Is it a $17 million budget cut to an $800 million budget? I don't think that those are the issues that have caused this horrendous fire, the wildfires that are in California at this time. And to bring DEI into this so early, I mean, how long have we been talking and you already came in with the DEI? Oh my God, you didn't even give us
I mean, if I were you, I wouldn't
10
want to.
minutes
I wouldn't want
before-
Democrats. I wouldn't want to hear me talk about it either. But the fact is,
I don't
this has
think
been
this is about-
mismanaged from a public policy
I don't think this
perspective
is
from
about
top to
California.
bottom.
I don't think this is about California Democrats, but I do think, to the Congresswoman's point, it's very telling that whenever you're talking about a woman, the fire chief being a woman or the mayor being a woman, it's always DEI. Why does DEI not ever come into play when you're talking about a white man?
No, let's be clear though.
Why?
It's not. It's wonderful that the fire chief is a woman. I don't think if she is capable.
I didn't bring that up.
Yeah, if she is capable, I don't care what gender she is. I don't care who she loves. I don't care what pigment her skin is. If she's willing to go save somebody's life in somebody's house, good on her. The reason Scott brought up is that just like your budget tells people what your priorities are, what you talk about in your bio, what you talk about on your website, what you emphasize in recruitment helps people understand what are your priorities in the
They
organization.
are putting their lives on the line.
And they're
as
incredible.
as we speak.
And they're incredible.
Okay?
And
they
we
are
should
putting their
welcome
lives on the line.
The political
Why
leaders
did we
aren't. The
bring it up?
firefighters are.
I'm talking about the firefighters, okay? The ones who are recruited, the black ones, the brown ones, the women, they are all there on the line right now. Everyone, stick around.
At some point in the conversation, it became painfully clear what was really going on. Whenever uncomfortable truths were brought up, whether it was about race, inequality, or accountability, the MAGA pundit tried to twist it into something else. Don't make it about race, they'd say. But let's be honest, when the same patterns keep showing up, when the same excuses keep being made, it already is about race. And that's exactly what one of the guests called out. Just call it what it is, racism. Because that's what it was. It's the same tactic we've seen 100 times. Blame anyone but the actual culprit. Just like the New Orleans attack when they first tried to pin it on immigrants, only to find out it was an American, a military man, who did it. But even then the conversation shifted again. Maybe the immigrants radicalized him. There's always an excuse when the suspect doesn't fit their favorite narrative, but when it's a white man, especially one who supports Trump, suddenly the topic changes. Suddenly there's no race angle to talk about. And that hypocrisy right there is what drives people insane. Because just imagine for a second if the tables were turned, if people treated you differently, judged your worth, or questioned your right to belong simply because of the color of your skin. That's not just wrong, that's barbaric. Then, in a rare moment of clarity, even one of the Republican guests, yes, a Republican, responded with decency. He said, if she's capable, I don't care what color her skin is. If she's saving lives, she deserves respect. Simple, human, decent. Why can't more people in that party talk like that? You can stand by your policies, your beliefs, your conservative values, without letting racism poison everything you stand for. You can disagree without dehumanizing people. That's the frustrating part. It doesn't have to be this way. But some of these pundits keep feeding the outrage machine, serving up the same hateful rhetoric because it gets applause from the worst corners of their base. It's political red meat, and it's rotting our culture from the inside out. By the end of the segment, even the host looked drained. You could feel the exhaustion, the sadness that comes from seeing the same toxic cycle replayed over and over again. And honestly, I felt that too. Because watching this, even a year later, it's like watching a boulder rolling downhill, gaining speed. threatening to crush everything good in its path. That's why channels like Fact Override exist, to push back, to slow that boulder down before it flattens what's left of our shared humanity. So, if you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Do you think open racism is getting normalized again? Or are more people finally waking up and fighting back? Let me know in the comments below. I read as many as I can. Thanks for watching till the end. If you found this breakdown insightful, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video so more people can see what's really going on. Because staying silent isn't an option anymore. This is Fact Override, where truth speaks louder than propaganda. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and never stop asking questions.